Our News on Terror segment tonight, the Supreme Court has canceled the oral arguments on President Trump's travel ban. They will no longer hear the case argued in front of them until the new version of the order, known as Travel Ban 3.0, has been clarified. So how is this travel ban different from its previous iterations? And how are liberals going to argue that this is a Muslim ban when this third order includes non-Muslim nations like North Korea and Venezuela? Watch.
Travel ban, the tougher, the better.
The U.S. president on Sunday signing a sweeping new order expanding visa restrictions to citizens from North Korea, Venezuela, and Chad, on top of 5 Muslim-majority countries that were already on the blacklist. The announcement comes just as Trump's original temporary ban was due to expire. The new policy will go into effect in mid-October and is permanent. Trump has taken to Twitter to defend the move, saying, quote, "Making America safe is my #1 priority. We will not admit those into our country we can't safely vet."
With me now from the Center for Security Policy, the Director of Threat Information, Kyle Shideler. Kyle, good to see you.
Thank you, Liz. It's good to be here.
All right, Kyle, talk to me about Travel Ban 3.0. What is the main difference between this iteration and the previous two that has led some experts to say that this one would hold up better against legal challenges?
Well, I think this travel ban, I would give them an A for effort, but I'm giving them maybe a C- as to the actual makeup of the ban, as it has a number of problems. It's likely, I think, more likely to survive a challenge because of the inclusion of Venezuela and North Korea. It's harder to argue that there's some kind of insidious religious freedom violation at work here, but it still doesn't meet the requirements for what we need in order to secure this country.
Right, and talk to me about, first, what do we need? What would need to be included in an order like this to secure our country, and why didn't the Trump administration include those things?
So the primary basis for the inclusion of a country on the list was information sharing, whether that country either had the ability or the willingness to provide us with additional information about prospective citizens who might be traveling here. The problem with that is information has never really been the basis for our problem with terrorism. As you know, Liz, most of the terrorists we've caught or have successfully pulled off attacks have been known wolves, meaning that we were well aware of their terrorist proclivities. So information sharing is not necessarily the problem. It's the travel of individuals involved and the number of individuals that are coming. The other problem involves some of the restrictions on the list, specifically as it relates to Venezuela. The list only designates Venezuelan officials, not Venezuelan citizens. That's a problem when you're talking about Venezuela because it has a reputation for selling Venezuelan passports and other Venezuelan documents to any number of individuals, including Hezbollah. There was a ring of Venezuelans selling Venezuelan passports and other ID out of the Iraqi embassy just a few years ago, where they sold literally thousands of papers. So we really have no idea and no way to determine who these people are just because they're traveling on a legitimate Venezuelan passport. The other problem is the removal of the Sudan. Sudan was removed because U.S. officials say that they do ample information sharing. The problem with that is that Sudan remains a state sponsor of terrorism. They're also responsible for the flow of weapons and jihadists into places like Libya, which are on the ban. So it just doesn't make any sense to remove them.
No, unless the primary goal of the Trump administration here is just to secure this order legally, to avoid it getting in front of the Supreme Court or getting it challenged or perhaps even overturned here. All right, Kyle, answer me this one. So liberals are arguing right now that this executive order is essentially a moot point when it comes to our national security, especially in regards to radical Islamist threats against us, because they say the majority of attacks that happen in America that are waged by radical Islamists are actually waged by homegrown terrorists. Whether they're American citizens or whether they immigrated here at a young age, they were radicalized here. How do you respond to that?
Well, that is technically true. Most attacks here in the United States have been either second generation or what they call 1.5 generation, meaning that they were someone who came to the United States as an immigrant, but at a very young age. That is true. However, the issue is not really whether flocks of terrorists are coming here, although that is possible, as has taken place in Europe. The issue really is whether or not the support structure and the communities in which terrorists can hide. communities that support their radical ideology but don't necessarily commit terrorism themselves are coming here. That's the real question. That's why ideological vetting, that is vetting which examines the prospective immigrants' desire to support the United States or to oppose it, is important. Are they a Sharia supremacist? That is, they prefer Sharia law over U.S. constitutional law and seek to see Sharia dominate, or are they really coming here to take part in the American dream? We don't currently ask questions like that the way we used to. We used to ask if people were communists or if they were Nazis and if they intended to overthrow the United States. Now, it's true that they could lie, but if they lie and we catch them, we can throw them out.
Right, that's very interesting. Kyle, we're almost out of time. Let me ask you one last question about this bill. So President Trump expanded the order, I should say. He expanded the order to include 3 new countries, Venezuela, North Korea, and Chad. He dropped the Sudan, as you mentioned before. Why didn't he add Saudi Arabia to this?
Well, right now he's working alongside Saudi Arabia, and they say information sharing with Saudi Arabia is very good, which is probably true. And again, information sharing is the basis for determining whether or not a country would go on the list. However, it shouldn't be the total determination. It should be a question more of that country's role in terrorism. But unfortunately, that's not how they chose to make the restrictions.
No, because Saudi Arabia, I think, would certainly fall under the category of sponsoring terrorism and funding terrorism, whether or not it's their government or their high-ranking citizens who control the government. I mean, they'd certainly fall under that category. Interesting. Kyle, thanks for being on the show today. I appreciate it.